Hello everybody, welcome to the shop. We're not working on a shop project today, we're just keeping the bees away from us while we're doing the first honey harvest. This is my second year beekeeping and finally got some honey. I have 2 medium supers worth of frames here, so that's 20 frames. And you can see a couple different states of doneness. I took these frames out even though they weren't fully capped because we're in a dearth right now, and I figure they might start actually eating this honey rather than building it up more. So it is possible that you see there's either honey or nectar in there and it's not capped like it is here. This capped honey, this is done and ready to go. This may either be nectar that isn't fully dehydrated, or they may have decapped it and just been eating out of it. So we're gonna check that. And this is an example of a full, well, almost full frame, completely ready to go. To check whether that honey or nectar is ready to extract, I'm just going to use this refractometer, same thing that I used for my maple syrup. I'm just going to pick a little bit out, put it on the lens there, look through it, and see what the moisture content is. The first step is going to be uncapping it. Got a couple different uncapping tools that I'm going to try. Not sure which I'll like best. Over uncapping tank, a Rubbermaid tote would have been a little more convenient, but this is all I had at the moment, so it's just a piece of wood there with a screw through it. We'll just stick the frame on the tip of the screw to hold it and scrape the cappings off, and the wax and honey will drip down there and we can deal with that later. And then there's another bucket here with a strainer. There's a coarse and then a fine below it to strain out the wax particles and bee parts and everything else. And this bucket has a honey gate on it, so once this fills up, let it sit, let it settle, let the air bubbles come up, let the wax pieces come up, skim that off, and then we can bottle it. Alright, so we're picking some honey or nectar out of the open cells and just putting it on there, and then we'll take a look through the eyepiece and see what our sugar content is.
And it's 80?
There you go, you can see that, or right at 80. So that's percent, no, that's degrees Brix, which is percent sugar basically, so we're at 80% sugar. So that is a little bit low sugar content, but I think it'll be good enough, especially there's only a few frames like this. So she's going to wipe that off, and we're going to test one of these just out of curiosity to see what percentage the bees capped it at.
This looks a little thicker.
Yeah.
I think. Is that adequate?
I think that is enough. I don't know. If it looks weird, we'll notice.
Okay, this looks like it's 80. So it's like 82.5.
Yeah, as you can see there, we're at 82.5. Might be hard to see the lines on the camera, but that's where we're at. So that technically is still a little bit low. I believe 83% is the acceptable minimum, but you can go a little below that. But I'm not going to concern myself with it. So that was just a little exercise, and also that lets me know that this stuff is suitable to extract. And every other frame, there's a few other frames that are uncapped like this, so we're just going to check them the same way as we pull them out. Alright, so we tried, well, 2 out of the 3 uncappers. We like the combs the best. This knife, the problem is a lot of the comb is below the surface or right at the surface of the wood, so there's really not much you can get. And on the case of some other frames, the comb sticks way out, so you're going to be chopping off a whole lot. But we both like the 2 different combs. This one, as you'll see, works quite well and also very satisfyingly. And the other one, this one sort of works as well, But this one is good. That red-handled one is good for the little low spots that this tool does not get. So both of us sort of agree on that. That's the easiest combination of tools. And we did try with that red-handled tool flipping it the other way like that, but it just, I guess, yeah, that works a little better than when we were using it before. But with that, you're pushing, and I find pulling with the other tool is a little bit more controllable than pushing with this. Alright, this cheap extractor works fairly well. The one problem we had is when we set the frames in dead straight, the very top lug, or the side lugs of the frame that hang on the shoulder in the box, those were hitting that top bar that the crank is attached to, so we had to put the frames in angled a little bit. But it works pretty good. The legs are a little floppy, and we have some full and some not full frames. There's some vibration going on. And you see I did bolt it down or screw it down to this pallet, partly to stabilize it, and also the legs are just barely not tall enough to fit underneath, or for the bucket to fit underneath the extractor. Well, there you have it. 5 gallons of honey from 10 frames. Now, if 20 frames, 2 boxes, 10 frames each. Now, if all 20 of those were fully filled, there would definitely be more than that. There were a number of frames that were only partially filled, but like I said, I pulled them out because I was afraid the bees were eating it rather than storing more. So anyway, cleanup process. My hands were all covered in honey, so I didn't film it, but I just took that rubber spatula down the side, and then the pallet that's on, I blocked it up on a Ruston Hornsby 7HR bearing cap to tilt it, and then I just, of course, just pushed all the honey out. So I'm going to let this sit for a while and maybe stir the cappings around a little bit to get as much honey out of there as possible. So at this point in the process, here's some thoughts and comments. Firstly, like I said before, this uncapping tank needs help. Definitely a larger thing like a Rubbermaid tote would be a lot better, just so you have more space for the cappings to fall off. Also, I added this screw here. This is very handy for wiping off your comb, because a lot of times the wax will get like globbed up and it'll gouge out a section of comb. So this little screw is really handy for cleaning that. Also, this 2x2, it rolls too much. If I used a 2x4, that would have been a lot better, would have been a lot more stable. This extractor was, I forget, 150 bucks or so, maybe a little less. And it worked. It'll work for a while, but you definitely get what you pay for. It's wobbly, and there's reviews that the gearbox doesn't last too long, like I've said. So I see this lasting me a few years, but if I keep up with this, if I get more hives, I don't see this sticking around for too long. But for what it is, for a small hobbyist, if you've got, let's say 1 to 4 hives, I'd say this is pretty good. Also, for the 3 frame, it's best, I did read this and I figured out why. It's best after you uncap it, put it in there, spin it a little bit, flip the frames, spin it again for the other side, And then at that point, all the frames are pretty much empty, so then you can really whip it up fast and really clean that second side as best as you can. Then you flip the frames a third time. Again, now everything's balanced, so you can really whip it around fast and really clean that first side, because a lot of times if not all the frames are filled identically, it's going to be out of balance. You can't spin that first side as fast as the second. So with the 3-frame, you do spend some extra time flipping frames back and forth. I should have bought a 4-frame. I think I was being cheap. The 4-frame was a little bit more money. I don't know what I was thinking. I spend so much money on oil field engines that don't do me any good, but I can't spend an extra 20 bucks on a honey extractor that'll make my life easier. But anyway, if you have a 3-frame tangential style, if you have one of these, that's the way to do it. So here's the table that I had my uncapping tank on. We even got a bumblebee in on the action there. And here's all the other equipment. This has been sitting out here for maybe an hour. Doesn't take them long to figure it out. Okay, today is tomorrow. I ended up putting all of the wax cappings into the strainer to let it drip, because the few cappings that I thought were dry enough that I put in that bowl, after an hour or two there was probably a half cup of honey in there. So I dumped it all in here, let it sit overnight. That did two things: all the honey in there drained out, and also all the air bubbles and wax and stuff floated up to the top. You can see some of it there. I have this just safe in the pantry, so let's pull it out and get some better light. We'll pull out the cappings and clean the top and get to bottling. Alright, so I lugged it into the house here. It's pretty damn heavy, so I just heaved it up on the chair for the moment. But there's actually very little stuff on top. Only a couple pieces of wax. Came out pretty well. Alright, so got my jars ready to go. These are brand new ball canning jars. I didn't know if they came super clean inside or not, so I washed them and I threw them in the oven at 250 to sterilize them and also dry them out. So I found that you hold the jar at an angle, and that helps prevent air bubbles. There you go. Well, there it is, everybody. That's just a hair under 5 gallons of honey. I'd say that was pretty successful. It was definitely a little bit of a learning curve. We got a couple things to improve for next time. Improve some of the equipment a little bit, like the extractor, stiffen that up a little bit, make a more ergonomic uncapping area. But as far as first time goes, I'd say that went pretty well. So I'm happy with it. I'm looking forward to doing it again. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to leave me a thumbs up if you like this, which I'm sure you did, and hit the subscribe button over there to keep up to date with all of my projects and adventures. Thanks for watching, everybody, and as always, come on back for more.